ceremony and ritual involved in the men's movement, including an incident that occurred in our green room for the taping of this show. We videotaped our guests preparing themselves for the show. They were burning sage, a regular kitchen spice, one man helping the other. They stood in a circle, arms around each other. Listen
Remember,
carefully.
this is about the men that are going to hear about this. This is for the men out there that need this work desperately.
And also think about all the women and kids that are watching that want to touch their fathers, who want to be touched by their fathers and their brothers and their sons.
Welcome the spirit of men, the spirit of men in the earth, the spirit of the seven directions.
They call themselves the New Warriors, and they're out to convince other men to make similar changes in their lives. Watch this.
I'm Les Sinclair. At this moment, I'm feeling some fear about being here, whether I'm going to be good enough for the show. I'm also feeling sadness. I feel sadness because I don't have my girls in my life. I wish that I had the experience that I've gone through in the New Warrior training 6 years prior to that, because my marriage, I think, would have been still intact. And this is hard. It's not easy to share feelings, but I am doing that. And this is what this work is about, is to men to get in touch with their feelings. I'm in.
I'm David. I'm feeling some fear and anxiety, feeling that my own fear of achievement will cause me to sabotage what I could really be good at doing, and that I will let myself sabotage myself before I'll experience achievement. I'm very concerned that if I get achievement, that I won't know how to handle it or embrace that as being okay for me, and that's what I really would like to embrace. So I struggle with overachieving and sabotaging my achievement, overachieving and sabotaging my achievement. It's causing some real pain and some turmoil in my life. And that's where I am. I'm in.
My name is Phil Donahue. I'm feeling very frightened. My heart's beating. Seeing all you people out there and knowing the cameras are here. That's hard for me to admit, because I was brought up that I'm a tough man, and I can't admit things such as fear. But it's easy for me to do that today. And I know I can take that fear, and if I put it out there, that it's going to be accepted. And that's what I'm doing. I'm really afraid. I'm in.
I'm Ken Druck, and I've got a very exciting period of my life coming up, but it also scares the heck out of me. I've got a new book coming out. I've got a big run coming up, a lot of success. I'm afraid it's going to take my soul the way it once did. So I've got to realize that being enough is right here, right now. It's not out there after some success. And I've got to stay grounded in that. And I'm in.
I'm Joe Lauer, and I'm feeling happy and excited. I left a circle of men up in northern Minnesota in the wilderness to get here and be with a circle of men here. And because of the hearts here, it feels like home here just as much as it does in Minnesota. One thing that's often difficult for me to share, though, is also there's a little boy inside who's not always sure he's good enough. Always wanted to be good enough for Dad, and wasn't always sure he made the grade. And there's some sadness with that, too. And I'm in.
My name is Jim Coleman, and right now I'm feeling really scared. Scared about what's going to happen, and scared that I'm going to be good enough. There's also great joy inside me to be with these men that I love, these men who give me strength and accept me exactly the way I am. Because inside me, and the thing that I don't want, especially men, to know about me is that there is a little boy inside that feels shame, a little boy inside that doesn't quite think he's good enough or worthy. And these men accept that little boy and accept me the way I am. And I'm in.
Oh.
I'm Ron Herring, and I'm surprised I'm not more nervous. I'm real excited. This has been a dream of mine for many years. What you need to know about me in terms of where I'm at right now is I'm a workaholic. And I don't know how to handle success. And so my fear in this is that I'll not come across the way I want to. And if I do come across well, it might create more success, and I won't know what to do with that. So I'm in.
Oh.
You know, all across America, there are groups of men like us who meet periodically, big groups, little groups, once a week, and come together to share their experiences and talk about the hurts and pains that they've had, the breaking up of their families, the things that have really affect us. Up until now, men haven't had permission in our society to do that. It's not okay for men to show their feelings. We're told as little boys, you know, grow up, be a man, don't show, have a stiff upper lip, don't show your feelings. And that cutting ourselves off from feeling is destroying us. It's destroying ourselves as people, it's destroying the women that we love, our relationships with other men as well. So we might just want to go around whenever anybody wants to jump in and explain what's happened to them since they've had their weekend, had an experience of themselves.
What you said there really hit a chord for me, because I know a lot of men in their lives who have a good chance of dying rich. They have all the trappings of economic power and all the material things and what the good life is supposed to be, but they're not living richly. Dying rich, but not living richly. For myself, what I got from the men's work and from reconnecting with men was the possibility that life held when I was 12 years old, when I knew the world was a great place and it was going to turn out okay. And then over the years that got tarnished, and I went, well, the world's not such a good place and life doesn't turn out, and it's a real mess. But discovering the hearts of men has brought back that idealism that I had as a youth and combined it with the experience I have as a man. It's real powerful. It's like being 12 and 40 at the same time and having the best of both worlds.
Working as a young psychologist, in crisis situations, I saw men coming in at the point which they were half dead and bleeding. The word help was not in the male vocabulary, nor was the word ouch. And we have to wait until we get sick in order to get better. And that was unacceptable to me. And I think I knew inherently, and also realized, having two daughters, that I was going to need to be in touch. I was going to need to be in touch with who I was, where I was going, what I wanted, what I felt. That whole part of my existence, my aliveness, my awareness, I wasn't going to be able to live without those things, nor was I going to be able to function as a professional. So this work has been very important to me for my entire life.
I found that with my daughters, that I couldn't relate to them from a place of loving Dad and loving them unconditionally. I put conditions on them because of where I was at and the anger that I had inside me and that defensiveness to whatever was going on. And now I've learned through the work that that part of me that's defensive, that little boy, has caused so much of the grief, has caused so much of that anger. And by accepting that, embracing that, and working with that little boy, there's really no need for me to be defensive and angry anymore. And I can love my daughters unconditionally. I can love my wife unconditionally.
Oh.
I think for me, the standard in my life was really very high in terms of our community and surviving and getting ahead in terms of your goals. And I just kind of swung to the extreme of trying to reach everybody's standards. My family, my brothers, my sisters, my cousins, everybody has got this high standard. You got to do this, you got to do that. And what I found is that I was overwhelmed with everyone else's standard but my own. And when I achieved their standard, I got silence as a reward. And when I achieved the standard that I set for myself, I couldn't embrace it and say, this is all right, this is cool, I've done what I need to do for me, I'm where I need to be. So I found myself constantly setting goals that were unattainable in terms of relaxing and saying that this is all right, this is where I need to be. So finally, I'm way out, a long ways away from home in terms of my feelings, a long ways away from home in terms of embracing myself and accepting my own achievement. And it's a lonely place out there. I think what this work has done is it has allowed me to relax, be who I am, embrace the person that I am. And if I don't meet everybody's standards, that's fine. If they like me, fine. If they don't, that's fine too, because I just can't meet everybody's standard. I'm going to like me for a change. And I think that this is what that the work has given me as an opportunity.
My story's similar to that. My dad died when I was about 5. And I got a message, I think from my aunt, that don't cry, your mother's got enough problems. So I learned very young not to cry, hold the emotions inside. And then the other message I got was, now you're the man in the family, you have to, and that was real clear. At 5 years old, I was the man in the family and I needed to take care of my mother. So the standards that I started working with was pleasing women. You know, from 5 years, maybe even younger than that, I don't remember. But from then on, it was like the external pleasing women and doing things, not for myself, but what does mother need? Or what does a woman need in my life? And that worked real well until the women's movement came along and my wife became very independent. And I said, you know, girl, do the things you need to do in my head. But when she did it, it scared the living daylights out of me in my guts. It's like my body said, no, you know, that's real scary. So it took a long time for me to adjust to that.
Who am I if I'm not pleasing women?
Well, we ended up with a divorce 15 years ago in that process. And I needed to grow up. I just needed to grow up. And I hadn't grown up. I was 38 years old, and my dad had died when he was 38, or approximately that. And I was afraid I was going to die at that time. I went through that whole syndrome.
And when I entered my late 20s, I became very wealthy, self-made millionaire. And I tried for 5 or 6 years of my life to buy happiness. I built a 12,000 square foot house complete with 2-lane bowling alley, and the pools and the exercise rooms and the music rooms, and everything I thought that I could have that money would buy. And it didn't work. It didn't work at all. I found out that I went from having a pickup truck of goods to where it was too, and I filled a bigger truck up. And then I get a bigger truck and a bigger truck. And finally I found out in my life I'm running around life with a huge truck full of stuff that I don't even know what it's about. And it wasn't until I get into a group of men that showed me face to face what my pain was that I could start dissecting that and taking little things away from the truck. And it's so much lighter in my life now for me to be able to go around with a small truck. I still have the tendencies. I want to get that bigger truck and get it back up again. But I'm one to say that you can look at these, you can make $1 million and you can be rich and you can be, but they don't add the little caveat of that is you can be very unhappy too. And I'm one to say that unless you balance the happiness inside you, you're not going to have it. Unless I do. The Indians say that health is a balance between what you know, what you say, and what you feel. And I didn't put those three together. I do now.
Do you believe that you could come to this conclusion without this men's group?
I couldn't, no. It took men to be really tough to me.
How did you all connect? Are you all from the same vicinity? How is this movement located in another town?
It's a wonderful question. The process is so interesting, and we could spend a show on that alone, because one man tells another man, I mean, a friend of mine from Chicago called me and said, hey, I know you've been doing this for a long time. I know you're going to think this is a crock, but I want you to trust me. And I just want you to come to this, and I think there's something for you there. And that's the way workshops like the one we're going to talk about today, and other workshops and programs and opportunities for men are coming about, is through one man putting himself on the line, or a woman, by saying, here's something you might want to look at. And the man's job at that point is to, instead of getting defensive, like, what do you think, I got a problem? You know, I mean, we have this knee-jerk defensiveness. Instead of getting defensive, saying, maybe this person is trying to tell me something. Maybe the person who loves me is trying to tell me something.
Is it kind of male bonding then?
Definitely.
Well, it's male bonding in the sense it's one heart reaching out to another heart.
Well, I think most men need this male companionship where they can release their feelings and be honest with each other, not put on front.
Yeah.
Yes.
Men have become incredibly isolated in our culture and taught not to show their feelings. In fact, there was a woman, a Jungian analyst in Boulder, who said it was the coat on a stick syndrome. Men were trained to become coats on sticks.
But we get together, we talk about the football game or the basketball game or the sports things, but we don't get into the feeling side.
We have what we have special purpose friendships as men. They're limited to either having a beer between us or talking about a thing or having a task. We don't enjoy what many women claim to enjoy, which is all-purpose friendships, where you cross over the line into each other's personal lives and share with your heart what's going on. By doing that, it creates a frame of reference for men. Suddenly, we're not alone. Suddenly, I can learn from each one of these men, and perhaps there's something that's happened in my life that can show them something about they might be facing a situation in their marriage, as a parent, a midlife situation, a job situation. It creates a community for us, which is what we've been missing.
The first thing we do when we start is the type of check-in we're talking about, getting men to their feelings. You got another question?
Yeah, now, you talk about all the sharing and stuff. Now, what do all your families say about this? I mean, aren't you taken away from your family lives?
We take this back to our families. We go and do our own work, and we take it back. You know, the way a wave works when it comes into the shore, the wave goes deep this way and it goes high this way. So the more we do our inner work and are secure in who we are as men here, the more that begins to show and shine out to our families.
Your question also implies that you have some idea that the men somehow are removed physically or by a period of time or something of that nature. It's just a weekend experience. My own experience has been in counseling, marriage and family counseling. I have graduate education in that, and I'm a pastor. So my understanding is at least that family systems are essential and an integral part of healing and wholeness. I think that the men that have gone through this kind of work, which I've recommended from my congregation, and I'm sure that there are other pastors who've recommended from their congregation, have seen much more intensity in terms of their connection with their family, much more honesty, much more transparency. That kind of thing is happening.
I also, in my area, through the New Warrior Weekend, I get together once a week with 8 other men that did the weekend with me, and we have a group meeting once a week. And in what we're talking about of taking it back, as Joe said, we go to this and take it back to our families. What's happened in my family is my wife is pushing me out the door Thursday night. It's time for you to go to integration group. So,
many of us have also brought our sons to the trainings.
How would you describe your relationship with your fathers as you were growing up, and how has that relationship changed since you've been in the movement?
I'm sure every man in this panel can talk about that. I was raised in Australia, and I think you all have an image of what the Aussie male is. I remember when I was 8 years of age, my father used to kiss me goodnight, and suddenly when I became 8, he said, "You don't have to kiss me anymore, you're a man." And so from one day to the next, I didn't have that affection with my father. And he didn't ever show affection to me. I got affection from my mother. I sought out the company of women. I felt safe with women. I was raised by my mother and my aunts. And just recently, I had the opportunity to go home to Australia to be with my parents. My father is 83 now. And I got down and I hugged him. We had a real heart-sharing experience, and it was incredible for me to tell my father that I loved him. And, you know, I would offer that to any man out there. Get in touch with your feelings. Go back, seek out being with your father, being with your kids, be mentors to your children. This is what this work's about, is connecting with the heart.
Even if your father has passed away, you can talk to him because he lives here. He lives here.
And for every story that you hear, like Les's, there are 20, like one that a client of mine came back and told me. This man had gone back, had flown across the country to see his father, who was terminally ill and dying, and was there in his father's hospital room, knowing that he would be seeing him for the last time. And he stopped and thought for a moment that for the first time he would, instead of an arm's-length handshake, that he would reach over and have the guts to say, "Dad, I love you," and pray for, and "I love you" in return. And that man did not go with that feeling. And he stuck out his hand, and he shook hands with his father, and he flew home, and his father died the next day. And this man was in my office telling me that story. So it's not only about deathbed I love yous. It's about learning to connect, and it's not only about our fathers, because we are each other's fathers. It's about learning from the community of men, and there's been a tremendous disconnection and discontinuity in male culture.
And I should go on to add that not all of us have father issues. I was single-parented by a black woman, and so were my two brothers. And so the father-son issue is not an issue for me. What is an issue is trusting men. I have a real problem trusting men, and particularly white men. And so I've had to go through a whole process of learning how to break down some of my barriers and some of my understanding of what that dynamic is all about. So it's not just all about father-son.
What does burning sage have to do with this movement?
Well, sage is a cleansing herb. It's used in a number of traditions, including Native American. And so burning sage purifies not only the air, but it's symbolic of a spiritual purification. And once we do it, it helps us connect with each other. You know, just to smell a sage and like, oh, I get in touch with my feelings again, because it sets up a ritual. It sets up a trigger that as soon as I smell sage, it's like, oh, I feel like I'm home again. There must be some men around here that I can sit down and talk with.
And it's real cynical for any of us to get, we can get real cynical about anybody's ritual. A ritual has to be appreciated, like all of us, I'm sure, have our own rituals and our own context. A ritual has to be appreciated in the context in which it's happening.
It's an anchor.
Yeah.
It's an anchor for us.
They call it the men's movement. They say they're tough and tender, fierce and gentle. The new 90s men. Watch.
One of the things we do on the weekend is we help men get past what we call homophobia. Homophobia is that fear that other men are going to... that's it, right there. It's a fear that we're going to get too close to men. And what I found in this work, and I've been doing this work for almost 15 years now, is that some of my best relationships and loving relationships have occurred with men. And I'm not talking about sexuality. I'm talking about heart-to-heart connection with other men. There's something about male energy when we come together that's real special. It's very special with women also, but it's neat to have some time just with men and to feel that energy. So we do a lot of hugging. We have a hug that we do. It's kind of a macho hug, but it's kind of fun, and that is we get the hug in there and we shake the guy a little bit and get, straighten out his back. Men are afraid to touch each other, and the way we do it is in athletics or competitive win-lose kinds of situations. We want to create win-win situations with other men.
You only get to touch when the guy gets a touchdown. Yeah. Or the back slapping and butt slapping. Yeah, it's got to be tough rather than tender.
My concern about that is that there is this perception that if you do touch, that you're becoming a touchy-feely kind of person. And my response to that is that there has to be some kind of physical contact beyond just the gesturally passed-by-night kind of casual conversation stuff. I think there needs to be more depth to it.
Yeah, and the other part of the touching is the eye contact. And we really push for eye contact. We'll spend 5-6 seconds before we make any other, before we touch or before we talk, just looking in each other's eye and making that contact.
Most of us in this culture have developed what I call male blindness. We don't see, we look into other men's faces, or we look right past other men to women. Yeah. But we don't see through the eyes of the window of the soul. We don't see the other man inside. We're learning how to see each other and recognize each other.
And it's not just men. Learning how to touch and be with men has helped me, and I've seen numerous other men, has helped us to be with women better. Because now I don't have a narrow way of touching and being with men. I have a wider way, and so I don't have to have a narrow way of touching women and being with women. It's not just sexual. It can be broader and deeper and more fulfilling.
I think what you're doing... You're an example of that, having both those qualities. Joe flew in last night from the upstate Minnesota, Bounty Waters, where he runs a camp for men. He takes them out for a couple weeks at a time, and they live on just the bare essentials. And he can turn from that, being out in the woods, and come right into a group of men and hug and touch and feel. And so it isn't all one or the other.
Right, fierce and gentle.
I think what you're doing is great because, unfortunately, in our society, we're so homophobic that we associate feelings and caring and hugging as being feminine, and it's not. It's just being a human. And I think that you're being human with each other. And do you ever have friends, like sometimes people give you a problem saying you're wimpy because you're hugging and caring and being? Do you ever have any feedback?
I think initially there's a self-consciousness. It's like, what am I doing? Is anybody watching? But I think after a while, you begin to realize it's what you think of you. It's not what other people think of you or how they interpret you.
Great.
It's what you think of you, and you start focusing on, this is my brother, I love him, I'm not ashamed to tell anybody. I love this man.
Yeah.
And
I hug all my
I'm not really
girlfriends,
concerned with a public opinion poll about that.
And the reaction I see from men is just the opposite. Rather than saying something, they walk away from it. They see men touching and being emotional, and they can't handle it.
Yeah, it's hard for
They
me.
don't know how to deal with it. They walk away.
I have had that where I've had men tease me that have seen me hugging warrior brothers and say, oh, what's all this about? You and the other guys, you've got something going. And basically what it's been for me is realizing that's their issue. It's not mine.
Right.
I'm comfortable showing my emotions to my warrior brothers, to other men. And if they're uncomfortable with it, that's their issue. It's not mine.
What has been the general feminist reaction to the men's movement?
It depends on the feminist. Many women say, right on, this is fantastic. I think when a woman really understands what's going on and really sees the fruit of it, not just thinks, oh yeah, they're running naked in the woods drumming and doing that male bonding stuff. When they really see the fruit of it, they understand it. They understand it. And there was a T-shirt back in the 60s that expressed the feminist movement. It said a man of quality is not threatened by a woman of equality, and I think that's true. But I'd also like to say that I think a powerful woman has nothing to fear from an empowered man.
Do you really run naked through the woods?
What do you think?
Meet a 19-year-old man we invited to sit in our audience. He recently decided to join the men's movement because he's been having difficulty dealing with the death of his father. Also, the wife of one of our guests is here to share how all of this has changed her life. Watch.
I'm Kelcie Koppenhaver. I went through the training weekend about a month ago, and it really opened up a whole new world for me. My father died when I was 12, and I realized that I had all this anger towards him for leaving me, and I didn't think it was okay to have that, because, it's not his fault he died. He died of cancer. So I didn't think it was okay for me to have that, and so I stuffed it, and I stuffed it, and I stuffed all my emotions, and I wasn't in touch with that part of me at all. And Ken Druck, who's been a beautiful friend to me, all these men have, he urged me to, not pushed, but put it out there, and I did it. I went for it, and it's opened up such new things to me, new experiences. I see the world in a different way. I used to have the same kind of, the young, I'm 19, I used to have the same kind of, well, Rambo's, I want to be like Rambo, he's strong, he can kill, and this is what I've learned, that this is the model for kids, that it should be the model for kids, because this is where you find what happens.
I want to stand next to you. I want to say something. I want to share something. This man's father, you were asked earlier how this happens and how men are brought to take a look at themselves. This man's father was my best friend. All right? And all the younger men are our sons. All the younger boys and men. And they don't have to wait until midlife. All right? The younger men need older men to step forward and say, if I've learned anything, I owe it to you to share it with you. And let me tell you something. They are our teachers. I am learning from this man. This is a great young man, and he's my teacher now, too.
Tell him how it feels,
and his father
Ken.
is smiling as he watches us both.
Oh.
I just wanted to respond to this question. I'm also a warrior brother. I'm married to a very strong woman,
And strong women love strong men. It has really helped our marriage a great deal. And the other thing that struck me is before this started today, there was an announcement about the show, and a lot of laughter, a lot of nervous laughter went throughout the audience. I thought, oh boy, I'm going to crawl under the chair. It's going to be a tough audience. But as soon as these men came out and started speaking from their heart, the honesty is what's so powerful to me. It's honest sharing. And I don't hear a lot of that through some of my days. And I guess the last thing I wanted to say about my experience is I liked what Robert Bly said, is that only a woman can make a boy, but only a man can make a man. Oh. It's really helped me.
My name is Jan Coleman, and that's my husband, Jim, up there. And I think for me the most profound, I get emotional, because it's such an amazing change in this man. He left the home. I told my girlfriend I think he had a brain transplant. He left home, and he was a very aggressive, strong, hard, macho man, and he came back and he was soft, and he was tender and open, and he knows how to communicate now, and he is what all women dream about a husband being, and he is, without a doubt, more incredibly strong now than he ever was, and that's because of his ability to be soft. And any woman who has any doubts about sending your husband to do this, don't even think about it. Do it. Support it. And there's not enough wonderful things that I can say. And the ability for these men to involve the wives at the graduations, one of the processes that they go through at the graduations is they all stand in a circle with the women inside and make a toast. The men make a toast to the important woman in their life. And so the women are included, are definitely a part of this. It's not like, oh, the men go in there with the men. It's the women are very involved and very supported, and it's a totally different attitude.
Let's do a survey. How many women out here in this audience would like a truly strong man in your life, really wants a truly strong man in your life? Right. Which women out here really want a weak man who doesn't know himself? All right. Most women want a strong man, a truly strong man, not a macho guy, but a truly strong man.
A strong man is someone who can feel and also be strong.
Lately, the men's movement has come under attack. Weekend training sessions, coupled with terms like the new warrior and male power, have been trouble spots and drawn criticism. Stay with us as we explore some of these issues.
I'm delighted to hear about the healing that's going on and the increase in self-esteem, but I have some anxiety over certain words. When I hear about the need for empowerment and the question, how many women here would like a strong man, and there wasn't overwhelming applause, I think that there's a tremendous issue about trust. Because men, it seems, have been thought of to be powerful is to be dominant.
Yes.
To be competitive is to also be oppressive to other people.
That's the old warrior.
Well, it's an old model, but it's a model that exists between men and between women and men.
And you know, it's no longer appropriate for the planet. It's no longer, we are creating a new way of being for men. Men need to get in touch with their feelings, and they need to be supportive. When you say a strong man, we should have said a strong loving man or a strong emotional man, strong supportive man, that comes from strength, all those things. We're not into violence. We didn't say strong violent man. We're the absolute antithesis of that.
But
Yeah,
I think
men
that there
have been
needs
left
to be
with-
sensitivity
Right.
to the distrust, because
Yes.
the images of strength that not only men have been brought up
Absolutely.
with,
Thank you.
but that women have been oppressed by.
Men have been
And
forced
so,
into narrow stereotypes. We've had, Arnold Schwarzenegger on one side and Woody Allen on the other. Well, neither one is that appealing. No offense to those two men. But to combine the best elements of both, to combine the strength when it's needed and combine the sensitivity and the gentleness, so that a strong man, 250 pounds, can hold his baby daughter and stroke her face and change her diaper and also get and protect her when she needs it and that type of thing.
And also, in addition to the softness, I think confront the roles of being the oppressor, of having
Exactly.
been the dominant one,
Yes. Exactly.
and the distrust that you will be greeted with for reason. The distrust that you have of other men for reason, because those were the virtues that were extolled. That was what it meant to be a man.
See, and this is what I was talking about earlier when I said the part of me that I don't want other people to know about, especially men. That little boy inside of me that doesn't feel good enough, that doesn't feel worthy. There was no way that I was going to open up and talk from my heart and share my feelings when they might be met with a feeling that I'm wrong. I'm not going to risk that. I'm not going to put it out there. I am going to talk intellectually and try to give my wife the answer that she was looking for so that I can be right, therefore I'm proved worthy. It's that, the fear of that, it's that I had to look at, and a hell of a lot of pain that went in looking at that has now made me feel it's okay to be that.
I would take it even a step further than that.
I got to jump in. Shut up. As a culture, we also, I really need to do this. Thank you, Reverend. As a culture, we also have shadows. We talk, when we're talking about things we don't want to face, we call that our shadow. And as men, we have created what you're talking about, and we really have to look at that. And it's a struggle I go through whenever I'm talking to women's group. And it's time that we as a group, as men, start to say, yeah, we have oppressed, we have taken advantage of, we have abused, we have raped, we have done many of these things. I'm not going to take responsibility for that whole thing, but we need to look at that shadow. And women also have to look at that shadow also.
Yeah, I think my own feeling, too, is that there needs to be some empowerment. For me as a black man, I don't want to be a part of a white program that tells me to be subordinate, okay? And I need to be around white men who trust my power over them.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to just live in this guise of, okay, we're going to go to a program and I get the double whammy. I get the double whammy as a man, okay? You can't be a man because you're black for 235 years, 150 years. After that, you still can't read and write. And then suddenly the women's issues come of age, and we're just getting the opportunity to be a man, and suddenly everybody says, oh no, you can't be a man. No. I'm going to be a man, and I'm going to have some power, and some white men are going to respect that. And this program is going to give me some platform in order to do that. And so it's not going to always be, I don't get any power, because I'm going to have some power too.
From what I can see, you tend to becoming more macho and more macho instead of being more sensitive. Can't you be sensitive to the human race instead of just to men? Can't you go to your families, to your wives? Why only to just men?
I want to answer that one. The training that I went through opened the door for me. I have a 6-year-old daughter, Zasha, who's in first grade now. And I have, since I've gone the last 4 years, I've been real active in her education. And I have seen her go from preschool to kindergarten to first grade. And it's appalling to me to see the lack of men that are involved in young children's education. And what I'm doing in my life, I get involved. I take her to school, I pick her up from school, I play with her at school, I get around the younger kids, I play with them. There's a real need. It doesn't have to be going away to groups and doing this. Part of the men's work that I do, my inner work, is that I'm committed to younger people. And it's been the women in this world that have had to educate, and that's been unfair. The men have really abandoned young children and bringing up young children. Not to say there aren't men that do that, but the majority of the education of our young children are done by women, and men need to step in.
Right.
What do you think
think,
I just wanted to say that there is a perception that warrior implies military, and I'm a military reserve officer. I have 17 years accumulated. I know what military is, and I certainly know what machoism is. And because of my office, I really live for helping people feel and touch each other in both in their spiritual life, prayer life, and realistic life. So, I resent the idea that this is just pushing them more towards machoism. I don't think that's happening at all. I feel very good about the people who have gone through this experience from my church. I think they're more loving, more sensitive, more caring. They're much more articulate in terms of their feelings toward women, and they affirm the values that women have held in high esteem. So I don't feel that way at all.
I also think you heard from my wife that I went there being angry and being macho and being hard. And what she's gotten now is a man who is open, who will listen, who wants to share feelings. So, and that's exactly what you're saying that we need, and that's what you heard her say she has.
Our research shows that also.
I'm really insulted in the fact that you said that my father didn't raise me well. I think I'm fine, and I don't need any other one's help.
Fine.
Great.
Great. Thank you.
What do you think the future holds for this group? Is it expanding? Are more men joining? Is it becoming more accepted?
We are about creating new, healthy identities for men. That's our mission. That's what this new Warrior program is about. That's what the men's movement is about. It's men getting in touch with their feelings, being honest, living lives with integrity. And we need the support of you women. Help your men to go these things. Get men involved. And we think if we move this out into the world, it will change the world.
It's just like biology. None of us came into this world strictly through a woman or strictly through a man. It took male and female energy to create every single person in this room, and that's what it takes to change our lives and our society.
If you had the time to ask every man in here, you'd find out, just like Phil shared, that he's in his daughter's school now, you'd find out that there are outgrowths of our work in this program, that each of us is taking it out in our own way and expanding it.
You're a good group of men, and keep the work up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cutting ourselves off from feeling is destroying us.
The Men's Sensitivity Movement, Part 2, next Donahue.
That's it for today. Join us again tomorrow for Part 2 of the Weekend Warriors, the Men's Movement, where we'll get an up-close look at some of the secret ceremony and ritual practiced by this new breed of sensitive American men. Welcome to Part 2 of our series on the men's movement. This is a growing group of men who join together on weekends and in weekly encounter sessions to learn how to become more open and sensitive. A group of men who say that men must change the way they interact with each other as well as with those around them. Later in this show, we'll witness some of the secret ceremony and ritual that has become part of the men's movement, including an emotional tribute that these men regularly pay to their fathers. Participants in this growing movement. Watch this.
I hear from the weekend, it sounds at first like an S-type weekend, then a 12-step type thing. It sounds more marriage encounter based also. Would you explain to us the modalities that you use? I think people would be interested in that.
If I can answer without, I'm not an expert in this, but I can tell you my experiences on the weekend was that at 44 years old, I went through initiation and became a man. I was the man of the house at 9 years old. My parents were divorced, and like Ron said, with him at 5, with me it was 9. And now I'm the man of the house with all that responsibility.
At age 9?
At age 9. Let me tell you, that's not fair. That's a rotten place to be in, is taking all that responsibility and not having the tools to handle it. And I was never taught what being a man was about, what being a real man was about. And I used to brag that I grew up on the streets. I learned about being a man from my buddies. And that's what one of the big problems in society today. The boys that are on the street calling themselves men, their fathers, their mentors, are the other boys on the street. Right. You're absolutely right. And with me, what happened on that weekend was I was put through initiation. I was shown about getting in touch with my own feelings, about what it's like to be a real man, and I don't have to hurt, I don't have to harm, and I don't have to be nasty and mean to be a man.
Trading competitiveness for communication.
I'm still competitive when it needs to be.
Yes,
in sports,
when it's
in
appropriate.
business, but I don't need to be competitive with my wife. I don't need to be competitive with my daughter.
But we're not only conditioned to be competitive with each other, we're primarily conditioned to be competitive between the sexes. Look at the sitcoms. And this is why I'm saying we should follow through with human encounter, because I was saying through the women's movement, it's human liberation, and this is the same thing.
Yes.
But this is step one. You have to stand up before you can walk.
Exactly.
Relate to your own sex so you can bring it to each other.
Do you ever have anyone that's very stubborn that goes to the weekend that you have to push that much more?
Every man is stubborn and went through this. We are the worst. There is a resistance. We don't have maps for what's going on inside of us. You asked the question about what happens. We develop a map to know where we've been, where we came from, what we feel, and what we want to make of our lives. And rather than describing all the processes, that's the overall process.
I came in with extreme cynicism. First, I understand the military. I certainly understand the church, and I certainly have some concept of healing and counseling. What is this? And where are you taking me, and what's going to happen here? So, I mean, to convince me that this is helpful was tremendous. Okay.
Yeah, I noticed earlier when you all said something where you connected, you used the expression "ho." What exactly does that mean?
It just means yes, you said it, I agree, that's great.
And it supports the person who said that. I want to just go back to the question about this is the first step. Most of my energy now is bringing together men and women who have done this work in very powerful ways. And when these women and men come together, it's really a way of creating equality. And when a man can work with a woman who has been abused in some way and really see the effect of that abuse, and vice versa, then we're really connecting. And that I see as the next stage.
I think that the results seem to be great, what you've done. I just was wondering if possibly you'd get more people involved, more men involved, if the things that you were doing weren't so bizarre.
What's bizarre?
What do you think is bizarre?
Well, I think that dressing up as Indians and sitting outside naked is a little bizarre.
Where did you get that? Where did you get that?
From the pictures, I mean.
And the pictures don't
and he
accurately...
said he was naked.
Yeah.
No.
The point is, yeah, go ahead.
I think that there's a tendency to focus in on symbol and metaphor as being the event itself.
I realize that, but what I'm saying is, wouldn't you get more men involved in it?
I have never dressed up as an Indian, I assure you that. And I don't think the bishop is going to go for me running around naked.
So you've never been naked either?
No chance. Okay.
So you've never been running around naked either, the way he said that he has?
No. You remember when in the 60s women were burning bras and the press made a big deal, oh, this is a women's where they're burning bras, they made a lot of fun out of it. That was a symbolic freeing up. I mean, I'd like to see men burn neckties. In fact, we may do something with some of these neckties. But if we go into, say, a sweat ceremony, when we're going to be physically perspiring, we're going to be in there usually without clothing on, you know. And many men are afraid of their bodies and ashamed to show them to other men. Many of us got messages growing up from our churches, our parents, that a male body was not okay, that a male body was a dirty thing. And we sit there and we will talk about that in some processes, some weekends. This is not all the time, you understand? And say, this is my body, and it's okay. This is where my children came from this body and my wife's body. And bringing something out of the darkness and into the open takes away the shame and the stigma, and that's why that's important.
Hi, I think what you're doing is great. I think you're sincere and honest, and that's why I think we all believe you. And I was just wondering, since we're still raising little boys to be aggressive and play the man role, what are you doing to prevent that?
You know what?
How are you interjecting
What
now?
we do when our sons, when they hurt their knees, we go over and say, I feel, it's okay, you can cry, little boy. I've been there. In the past, what we do is say, it's okay, toughen up, you know, don't show your emotions, don't cry, be a man. That kills us. So what we're saying to our sons and our daughters. We feel your pain, it's okay, come here,
Go ahead and cry.
Love them. It's okay, let them cry. Be honest.
Yes, I just have a comment on what she said before about she thinks you have to rely on other men in order to open up. I mean, for years everybody's been with this. You haven't had these groups like before 1984. If you hadn't had it, other men to rely on, and now this is working. They're getting the sensitivity they've been looking for. I don't understand why she minds where it comes from, as long as you're getting it.
Yes, thank you.
I just wanted to say that the weekends are not designated with a theme such as marriage counseling or anything like that. There seems to be some kind of illusion. It's about simply finding your wounds. Everybody has wounds from their childhood. Everybody. Even you might not want to face them, but it's about seeing your wounds and healing, and that's where you get strength. And you carry that throughout your life into all your relationships, not just with men. It's not just a man thing. It's about healing yourself and facing your fears and relating to people in general much differently.
A lot of men in America are afraid to belong to a community. They have Archie Bunker personalities. Do you feel that they don't belong to PTAs, they don't join a college fraternity? Do you feel that your organization helps to break down these social barriers?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
it can. How it worked for me is that my arrogance and my violence and my anger prohibited me from looking at it from the other person's standpoint. Once I was able to break through that stuff for myself, then I could say, okay, I can take you, I can understand where you're coming from.
And I'd like to say something along with Phil on that, is that we don't go and grab men off the streets and say, come in here, we're going to fix you. These are men who reach out. And I would like to say, if there are men seeing this, take the chance, take the risk, and reach out. Is maybe the best thing you ever did for yourself in your entire life. Don't be afraid.
Ask for help.
There are brothers who have shared the pain, the isolation that you felt, and there is somebody out here who can understand, but you need to tell us where you are.
On yesterday's show, we met Jan Coleman. Her husband, Jim, is a participant in the men's movement and one of our guests. He's participated in both weekend trips and weekly encounter groups with other men. Jan shared with us the changes she's noticed in her husband and in her marriage.
My name is Jan Coleman, and that's my husband, Jim, up there. And I think for me the most profound, I get emotional, because it's such an amazing change in this man. He left the home. I told my girlfriend I think he had a brain transplant. He left home, and he was a very aggressive, strong, hard, macho man, and he came back and he was soft, and he was tender and open, and he knows how to communicate now, and he is what all women dream about a husband being, and he is, without a doubt, more incredibly strong now than he ever was. And that's because of his ability to be soft. And any woman who has any doubts about sending your husband to do this, don't even think about it. Do it. Support it.
Remember, this is a group for men only, men who are hoping that by learning and by being more open and sensitive, they'll change the course of their own lives as well as the lives of those around them.
I was one of those women that was snickering, when you first came in, because I didn't understand it. I still don't understand it. When I was listening to the wife talk about her husband, I know a lot of men. My friend works with mostly men. I deal with mostly men. What was the brain transplant? What did you possibly do that weekend that you couldn't have related to your wives or your families? To me, my family is my closest possible thing. What couldn't you relate to them that you could relate to one another, that you could break through whatever this barrier was to now be able to make relationships with other people? Well, that's the question. What is it? What do you do?
Yeah, I think that's just exactly the kind of question.
Explain what you do.
Let me explain this. When I walked in to this seminar, I'm a clinical psychologist. I've written books about men. I've worked in this field for 20 years, okay? And when I walked into this weekend, something was there that doesn't exist. In 20 years, I've gotten pretty smooth and pretty slick, all right? I'm so good, sometimes I have pain, I can fool my own family. They don't know it. But when I walked into this weekend, there was accountability, and there were men looking me square in the eye and saying, there's no place to hide here, and you need not hide. And you can show what you live with inside, and you can do something about it. This is a safe place. And And what's lacking, even in our own homes, in our relationships, is a safe place, because our wives and our families and our workplace, they depend so much on us. This is a place where I didn't have to be strong or in control or in charge. And it was where I met men who would settle for nothing less than what was in my heart.
We also get to look at that part of us that we're so afraid of. We won't share it with anybody, our wives, anybody. We don't want anybody to know about that part that restricts us from being a total human being. We get to look at that and process it out in a safe place with men who are supportive. That's what happens. We look at the thing that prevents us from being whole.
Well, we go through a whole process of setting this up. We worked on this for a whole year. And the process is not that much different than the work that women do. Women have taught us a lot about growing. In fact, I say women are about 15 years ahead of men in personal growth. And we need to catch up. And this is an opportunity to do that. When a man looks deep into himself, he's got to face some of his deepest fears. When he does that, I see major changes happening with men. I've worked with over 1,000 men in this process, and I can say every man that's gone through the process has looked into his heart, into his gut, into his deepest fear, and he's looked at that, and he said, it's not as bad as I thought it was. I don't need to hide it as much. And then it becomes less fearful. And then he goes beyond and creates more of a success, and particularly a sensitivity to relationship. I've seen every man on this panel, and many of them in the audience, really get in touch with their wives, their children, and really come from their hearts hundreds and thousands of times.
I would like to respond to the lady who asked a question about what could be different about the way my husband is now after one weekend. And the biggest difference is that he now talks from his heart, not his head. He used to answer questions as to, you know, how he thought I would like the answer and what he thought I would like to hear. He doesn't do that anymore. Now I know when he looks me in the eye, he's saying what he really feels, and he responds what he really feels, not what he is thinking or thinking what I want to hear. And that makes an incredible difference and allows communication to go on between us, real communication.
Our guests today come from all over the country. We have a business executive, a minister, a psychologist, a TV producer, and a dentist, among others. They all came together to say that until recently, they've not been able to enjoy their lives. Today, they say that because of the men's movement, they are able to enjoy their personal and their professional lives, and they're trying to spread the word.
Most of what you're talking about seems to be relating to within your group, and I wonder how you do outside of the structure of your group where you have a safe environment. I'm coming from a point where I'm a sensitive man. And my experience has been that's not a quality that's appreciated by other men in particular.
Yes. Right.
And when I do get the courage to express my sensitivity, I find that on those occasions I do, that men tend to run for the hills. And I wonder how you make out outside of your own group in your everyday life. Do you go up and hug your men that you work with?
That's a great question, and there's a lot that is changing out there in the real world. And what's changing, for example, is the way corporations operate. Right. When you look at the men operating in top-level management, I work a lot with these men. These men are beginning to ask questions. How effective am I as a leader? If this is macho leadership, this is not working. What we're beginning to understand about leadership is that it has to do with working together. It has to do with embracing other people's ideas.
Trust and
It has to do with
integrity.
trusting other men in corporations where men have traditionally stabbed one another in the back and stepped over one another to climb the ladder.
And since we have no permission to feel in the general society as men, then the response is that maybe you're trying to get something off of me. That's the reason you're being really nice to me. Maybe you're a manipulator. You're trying to get feelings out of me that I don't want to feel at this time. So misconception is going to be there. And that's just something we have to deal with.
Men have this ability within themselves already. You know, there are certain trees in the forest that the seed does not come out unless there's a fire, and it opens up the seed pod, and then the new life can start. In a way, that's like men in some sense. Men have to go through some kind of initiation process, some kind of intensity, at least in our culture, to open up what's been there all along and let that seed grow and flower.
And I see that happening with corporations. I'm working with two Fortune 500 companies right now, and they've hired me to come in and work with engineers and CEO on the human factor. So the corporations are saying things need to change, things have to change.
You need to start from inside. You need to look at yourself. You need to change. You need to learn how to change. And I'll guarantee you, whether it's in New York City or Chicago or no matter where the major city is, there is a litany of men's organizations that you can get active and get involved in. And I suggest you take that first step and do it.
When you go into a company, how do these men react to you?
That's a good question. The first thing that happens is they're threatened by me coming in. They think that I'm a headhunter and I'm going to get them fired. So the first thing we have to work on is trust. But these men also know that something's not working for them. As soon as I start talking to them about what's going on in their life, what's your mission in life, what do you want to accomplish, they know it's not working. But they usually have something that's working for them in their family, in a relationship with one person, and then we build on that. So what they do very often is first resistance, then trust, and then an openness and say, let's do this together and let's find out what it is that will make me more efficient within this corporation.
I get invitations, I get a call, because I do a lot of public speaking, saying, would you come and talk to my executive group about this man thing?
Right.
People are getting a sense there's something going on here, and I'll go in and talk to a group. And once these men have shared, we'll sit down and, for example, share stories of simply what happened in our relationship with our dads. Right? What was the blueprint for being a man that we got from our fathers?
Right.
Suddenly, we are a community. We realize that 90% of us grew up, contrary to what the gentleman said, 90% of us grow up in homes where our fathers were either physically and or psychologically absent, and that has left a vacuum. And suddenly we begin to share with one another as executives, as important executives who are very insulated by their success, perhaps, insulated from their emotions. Suddenly, everybody realizes there's so much more to it.
I want to say I went through in about 7 months ago, and since I went through, there has been a power and a passion in my life that had been missing for a long time. I'm passionate about my family. I'm passionate about my work. I'm passionate about my mission, which is to reach out to people, to help them heal their inner child. And it is incredibly moving every day for me to be in touch with that passion. And it wasn't there before. It's there now.
Are certain rituals which are part of the men's movement. Yesterday we showed you how the men prepared for our taping. They were burning sage, a regular kitchen spice, as a cleansing ritual, and otherwise giving each other support. They call themselves the New Warriors, and they organize a multitude of activities, including weekend retreats, training sessions, and weekly encounter groups.
I, too, just finished the warrior training this past weekend. Laura was very helpful to me, thank you. I have a lot of fear right now, but I just wanted to share that I was very lost for a long time in going through therapy, and I did a lot of reading. And I really went up into my head a lot. And what the warrior training has helped me do is sort of say that that's okay, but it's time to get here.
Yeah, beautiful.
And I just want to thank you for that.
One thing I want to point out is that it is so important to realize that we're not just talking about a weekend in a man's life. There are weekends and programs. There are programs today in hospitals. There are fathering, parent effectiveness programs. There are so many dimensions to this work. We're not talking about weekend. We're talking about a lifetime. And there are programs which provide a catalyst for the kind of change that we all want in our lives. That's mainly what we're talking about.
Something that Margaret Mead said, I think goes well with that. Margaret Mead said back in the 60s, 30 years ago, was that too domesticated and weren't taking a strong, active, virile, if you will, a seeding role in empowering their communities. And that was Margaret Mead.
So where do you go as a man? I mean, where do you go? Even if you're sitting out there thinking, hey, this sounds like a great idea, where do I go? You know, we're beginning to develop resources. This is not the final answer. This is not the solution. We're in the process of understanding in this culture where men can go so we don't have to get sick in order to get better.
We have a question.
I just wanted to know, do you have like these men groups all across the country as a membership? How long do you have to be in the organization?
We have centers throughout the United States. We have 11 centers now, and that will probably double into the year 1993.
Is there a fee?
The fee is approximately $500 for the weekend.
and that includes lodging and staying over. And you go to a weekend, and then we have an 8-week integration period afterwards to integrate what you've learned.
We have some pictures that are going to come up on the monitor that we've been asked to comment on. These photographs, as I understand it, are from a photographer who gives these photographs to the Windspan, which is a... Well, that didn't happen to me when I went.
No, no. Is that me? I think that was Lauer's weekend.
A Wingspan is an excellent resource for men and women to find out what's going on in the country. It's a publication that comes out on a quarterly basis?
Yeah, quarterly. There's a sweat lodge.
There's a sweat lodge. There's some men drumming there.
Looks like drumming. We do drumming.
A lot of people ask, why do we drum? And the answer is, pianos are just too heavy to take out into the woods.
Yeah. From a psychological standpoint, when I first came into the program, it was interesting. There are so many dimensions to the work, and this work keeps growing. In other words, there are behavioral dimensions, and there's group work, and there's imagery work. So it is a smorgasbord of different approaches and techniques, all choreographed and brought together. And in my opinion, it is the finest program for men that is available today. But we're not just talking about one program.
Right.
We're talking about looking in your own communities where resources are developing.
I'm interested in finding out why you're called warriors. Also, is there a point at which you can drop the ceremony and the ritual and just enjoy conversing with people normally?
Good question. As one of the founders of the program, we wrestled a long time with what we should call this. And we decided on the word warrior because the original definition of warrior was a man or a woman who would go inside and war inside. And what I like to say is if we're going to talk about the war is against negativity, inequality. The war is against the things that lessen our ability to understand ourselves. So this weekend is really designed, and some of the things on the monitor showed this before, of men gathering and looking inside. What is it inside of that I'm really afraid of? That, and you heard us discuss some of those things here. And we still struggle with that because a lot of people hear the word warrior and they think we're going out with pellet guns and all other kinds of things. And what we're really talking about is getting into our hearts.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I don't feel it necessary to put on masks and beat drums to express my feelings. Why do you?
I don't find it necessary to put on a mask or beat drums or do anything like that necessarily.
Right,
If I can express, if I have the freedom though to express myself in whatever way, I'm very athletic. I play in a men's over 40 soccer league. I express as much emotion there as I do on the weekend. We all choose our formats. The idea is that we're not in prison, that I have the freedom to say, hey, I'll go on this weekend and do this, as well as express my feelings to my family.
Okay, can you just help me to understand better how those rituals, for lack of a better term, help you to feel better, or communicate better?
If I can hit the one on the mask, I want to mention the mask.
She's actually going reverse.
There's a process that's used in some groups, and there are different groups all over the country. They make masks where they do things on their face and they pull it off. And it's really a powerful thing to be able to make a mask of your face and turn around and look at it and see your exact features and spend some quality time processing that. It's a real deep emotional thing.
I see it as just the opposite of that. I see the feeling being locked into place by a symbol.
Right.
I see the feel. When I smell the sage,
Right.
yeah, when I smell the sage now, I remember the healing that took place.
Mm-hmm.
When I hear the drums beat, I remember the healing that took place. And certainly in my understanding of tradition and metaphor and all of that, there's definitely symbolic. Christ is not being killed every Sunday. There is something happening in the symbol of that experience that reminds me of something that happened somewhere else.
The ritual is reliving the history. And so one of the things that I think we're really missing in this country are rituals for men, okay, and for women.
Healthy rituals.
Healthy rituals for men. And a ritual allows me then to relive the history of that ritual and get in contact with either these men or my grandfathers or other men in this culture.
As it is today, what way do young men have of growing into manhood? What rituals do we have for young men?
Right.
You know, going out, getting drunk,
But
getting
didn't men
arrested?
used to have a lot of rituals, and isn't this kind of a returning to the old patriarchy system of...
We want to get away from the ritual of dollar beer on Fridays.
Yeah. Let me say something. Let me say something about patriarchy. Patriarchy wounds and keeps men down just as much as it does women, because there's only one patriarch and all the other men are subordinate to that. I think you can see from this circle, these are men as equals, men and women as equals, no one system. Going back to our roots strengthens ourselves. We don't want to go back to the savage, but we do want to go back to what made men, what made women.
The men's movement is a growing phenomenon in this country. Men coming together to learn how to share their feelings. Our guests today maintain that men in this country are not conditioned to be open and sensitive. And this group is out to change that for themselves and for others.
Okay, congratulations for recognizing that there's been a deficit in your life and being strong enough to find out what it is, because I understand where you're coming from. And women have the same problem where they've been socially raised to be certain role models, and we all have a lot of growing to do. And I hope that people out there will buy their sons some dolls and buy their sons some doll houses so that they get into the mode of hugging and taking care of and nurturing. Because that's where everybody's afraid their sons are going to grow up to be huggers, and they only relate that to femininity, and that is a shame. And women have to be able to be a little stronger too. Is there any reason why there seems to be more of a white group here, or are there other?
You know, I'm so glad you said it, because I was thinking to myself, I go off the air and I don't say something about race, there's going to be a problem. We've had a plethora of problems associated with race. Rodney King, to mention, you know, a whole wave of things going on with that. First of all, I need to say that any healing that white men receive is going to help all black men everywhere. We have had so much denial in this country that it is just nauseating. And the race issue seems to neuter the whole atmosphere almost immediately. Everybody's afraid, oh my God, don't let, you know. And so there's no dialogue, there's no interaction, there's no healing, there's no confronting the dynamics associated therewith. In this case, what I'm seeing is there are men that I can trust who are white. They're few, but they exist. And the starting of that process is bringing healing to me, and is bringing a clearer openness to what my calling is in terms of the global ministry of the church. So I think that there is some movement toward that. I'm one representative, but I'm not the only black one in the whole nation, and I'm certainly not the only person of color. There are others, and that's happening very slowly.
I'm feeling a little fear here, but I think this honesty and openness is wonderful. I only wish my father had had access to this type of sharing, because I have 5 brothers and 7 sisters. We all miss him, and we never really told him we love him. And I remember I was at his deathbed. I didn't know he was going to die. It was very sudden. And I couldn't say I love you. I just said, it's okay, Dad. And I remember feeling, and it's been 15 years, but I still feel that he can hear me.
He can hear you.
Thank you.
You guys go away for a weekend, you go away all by yourself, and you have all this language that's all your own, you have all these clothings that seem to be all your own. Is there anything that's similar to a cult or brainwashing in it? I mean, it seems like you're all speaking in a language that I don't recognize. You're saying ho to each other, you're holding each other's arms. I just don't recognize that. I don't see where that belongs.
That's exactly the problem, that you don't see other men touching each other. That's exactly the problem.
Yeah, and that's a good question about the cult, too, because we do tend to share a common language, and sometimes that will exclude people. Just as if we were plumbers up here talking about plumbing, we'd be using some terms you hadn't heard that we'd be familiar with.
Go to seminary.
But
I got some terms you will never hear of. Hermeneutical circle.
The answer is this is not a cult. This has nothing to do with a cult, anything like that. In order to change the way we all frame, the way we all think, the way we all act, some things are done differently. It's a new look. And you don't have the same defenses that you usually have going into a situation.
Also, in a cult, my definition of a cult is you give your power away to some leader or some ideology you just give yourself away to. This is the absolute opposite of that. We get from this, so it is not a cult.
One of the things we did when we founded this was to make sure that empowerment spreads throughout the organization.
I also want to know, do you think that there's any people that don't belong in your organization?
No.
Are there any men that you say, well, you know, he's all right, he doesn't really belong here?
There are men that I will not refer as a psychologist. There are men I will not refer to this program.
Certainly as a pastor.
Because it is a very intense program. It is very confrontational, and a man has to be ready to step forward and have this kind of a weekend experience. There are a lot of men who are on a completely different path, who are going to move a lot slower, who who want a program where somebody is talking to them more on a head level. There are lots of different paths to learning about yourself as a man. This is not the only one.
I'm sure there are many men who don't need to go to a group like this, and they know who they are.
Going along with what he said, you know, everything you say sounds great, you know, everything you're doing, but when you talk about the actual weekend, you're being so vague about it. I don't think anyone understands what you really do. And he said it cost $500. Where's this money going if you're just out in the woods?
It's a not-for-profit organization. It does take money to put these things on. Normally at a weekend, in our particular case, we have about 25 guys that go through on the weekend, and we have a staff of about 26 to 30. So that takes some money to put on. It's a not-for-profit.
I want to say something about it. We are not here today, at least I'll tell you, I'm not here. I'm not here to sell any program. There are many men's programs. We are using the discussion of this program as a vehicle to talk to you about the larger issue of what is changing in our world and what we have the power to change in our own personal world. This is not a sales pitch for you to come to a weekend.
Many of the processes in the weekend are intense. Much of the weekend is kept confidential to protect the men who come through so that they know this is a safe place. We're not going to trot out what you did in public.
If you missed yesterday's show, you haven't had a chance to meet Kelsey Koppenhaver, a 19-year-old who recently joined the men's movement. Watch this.
I'm Kelcie Koppenhaver. I went through the training weekend about a month ago, and it really opened up a whole new world for me. My father died when I was 12, and I realized that I had all this anger towards him for leaving me, and I didn't think it was okay to have that, because, you know, it's not his fault he died. He died of cancer. So I didn't think it was okay for me to have that, and so I stuffed it, and I stuffed it, and then I stuffed all my emotions, and I wasn't in touch with that part of me at all. And Ken Druck, who's been a beautiful friend to me, all these men have, he urged me to not push, but put it out there, and I did it. I went for it. And it's opened up such new things to me, new experiences. I see the world in a different way. I used to have the same kind of, you know, I'm 19, I used to have the same kind of, well, Rambo's, you know, I want to be like Rambo. You know, he's strong, he can kill, and this is what I've learned, that this is the model for kids, that it should be the model for kids, because this is where you find real happiness.
I want to stand next to you.
The men who are leaders and participants in this movement will tell you that one of the most important relationships in their lives has been with their fathers. And they have created a ritual around honoring their fathers.
We do, one of our activities is we take on the name of our family, and we take it on as far back as we remember the history of our name. And we do it in a circle, and we could do that here, if you'd like.
Let's do that. Sure. And take on the father, son of so-and-so, son of so, grandfather, as far back as you know.
All right.
You want to model it, Phil?
You can go ahead.
All right. I am Lauer, son of Joseph, son of Joseph, son of Edwin.
Your name is Lauer. Lauer. Lauer.
Son of Joseph.
Mm-hmm. I am Sinclair, son of Les, and his father is James.
You are Sinclair. Sinclair. Sinclair.
Thank you.
My name is Buchanuski. I am the son of John, who is the son of Joseph.
Your name is Buchanuski. Buchanuski. Buchanuski.
I am Druck, the son of Charles, who was the son of Israel.
Your name is Druck. 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 And if you think it's funny, ask yourself why you're laughing about a man getting in touch with his heritage and his roots.
And recalling his father and his grandfather.
I am Koppenhaver, son of Terry, the son of John.
You are Koppenhaver. Koppenhaver. Koppenhaver.
I'd like to respond to the money question. I have spent a lot of money on things that was worthless. And You know, growing up in the black community, I know how to spend money in ways that white people haven't thought of. Hello? That's just the bottom line. When you really make up your mind to do something, you do it. You don't let money get in the way. $500 is nothing compared to what I've wasted. As a sailor, I wasted a lot of money. $500 was nothing. Okay, so it's about making up your mind first that you want to do it. There are scholarships available, obviously. You know, I had to absorb one. I was a minister. I couldn't afford that amount of money. But so they exist. The question is your mind made up to go? That's one. And then two, in question about the confidentiality, I think that one of the most powerful tools I have as a minister is the fact that people come to me and they know that what they tell me stays with me. What you take up on that mountain stays on that mountain. And that's why we're protecting that.
And the organization I'm involved in has a motto: we refuse no man because of money. If you can only pay $5, at some time we'll fit you in.
And that's true. They have men going through in all the organizations who pay, you know, off over a period of time. It is important that a man, however, do something of some sense, that he put a piece of himself out there, and often that's represented by putting a down payment, or, you know, putting his commitment on the line is what it really amounts to.
How many of you men are divorced?
I'm divorced.
And you have children?
I have 2 little girls.
You want to ask us?
How many are married?
I'm married for 20 years to a beautiful woman named Karen. I have 2 children.
How many have never been married?
So, you know, so it's really important to also ask how many of us are married, and because how many of you are divorced question me is kind of implying, well, how many of you have screwed up a relationship? All of us have learned through many relationships. All of us have screwed up our relationships, whether we're married or divorced.
Two-part series on Weekend Warriors, the men's movement.
Come here. Take a picture. Take a picture.
Take a picture.
Yeah, hurry up. That's great. Hey, come over here to the center here.
You're so much thinner in person.
Yes. This is our newest initiate.
Oh, take a couple of them.
Just push that lock forward.
You are Donahue.
Yeah.
Donahue. This is the son of Phil. Who is the son of?
The son of
Your father's
Phil,
name.
too.
Oh, great. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you, one and all. You look so good on television.